Chapter 5 Tips for Dealing with Manipulative People. The first and most important thing that you need to do to defend yourself against mind and emotional control and manipulation is to accept the fact that the person you are dealing with is controlling and manipulative. And that's his or her nature. The reason people stay with controlling individuals is that they operate under the misconception that such people can change. Many controlling and manipulative people tend to have dark personality traits such as narcissism, Machiavellianism, sadism, or psychopathy. That means that the need to control others is just part of who they are. If you start dating someone or associating with them in any other way and you realize that they are controlling, don't delude yourself into thinking that you will be able to change them and make them less controlling. That is part of the manipulation. They'll put out signals that indicate to you that they might be open to change, but that only makes you feel more invested in the relationship. It makes you susceptible to further manipulation and control. Controlling people won't change on their own, they need to control others as primal. And it's not something that can be easily trained out of a person. So, once you see any of the signs of control that we discussed in the previous chapter, it's time for you to either sever your connection with the person, or if he or she is a permanent part of your life like a family member that you can't completely avoid, you should start considering some of the defensive strategies that we will discuss in this chapter. Once you have accepted that controlling people won't change on their own, it's time to come up with a strategy to deal with them. Towards that end, the first thing you need to do is ensure that you understand all your fundamental human rights, and make sure that the controlling person doesn't violate them. You have every right to stand up and to defend your fundamental rights, including the right to be treated with respect, the right to set and pursue your own priorities, the right to express your own needs and feelings, the right to say no to someone's request without feeling guilty about it, the right to have an opinion that differs from that of anyone and everyone else, the right to pursue a happy and healthy life, and the right to protect yourself from threats, including physical, mental, and emotional threats. If someone infringes on any of these rights, you have a right to act. Controlling people will try to convince you otherwise. They'll tell you don't feel how you feel, or that they didn't mean something the way you interpreted it. But don't ever substitute your own objective judgment for someone else's, if you feel what the manipulator is doing is harmful to you. Don't give them the chance to convince you otherwise. Because no matter how smart you are, good manipulators will be able to talk you out of anything. Think of the rights we have listed above as boundaries. Picture them as lines that separate you from everyone else, even the people you love. No one gets to cross those lines. Anyone who does is out to control you. We are not trying to get you to be paranoid. We are trying to get you to be vigilant. It's only by being vigilant that you will be able to see a controlling person come from a mile away. And you'll be able to strategize and to defend yourself. You need to learn to tune into your real feelings in every situation that you find yourself in. The thing about controlling people is that they try their best to be subtle so that their manipulation techniques can fly under the radar. That means that if you are interacting with such people, at the same time, you are on autopilot. And it can be extremely difficult for you even to recognize the fact that they are trying to control you. So you won't be able to take defensive action. Whenever anyone makes you have negative feelings, or they make you doubt your conviction about something, it's time to snap out of autopilot mode and tune into the way you genuinely feel. Define the feeling. Is it guilt? Is it insecurity? Is it self-doubt? If you feel obligated to act a certain way, try to uncover the reason behind that sense of obligation. Are you afraid? Are you ashamed? Are you reciprocating? Unless you articulate your thoughts and feelings in such moments, you will be unable to tell when you are being manipulated. Once you get the sense that you are being manipulated or someone is trying to control you, start scrutinizing everything they do. Manipulators work tirelessly to get you to fall into their trap. Every action they take will be tactfully selected to steer you one way or the other. The only way to avoid falling into their trap is by assuming that everything that they put on your path is a potential trap. Since you know they are controlling, if they do something nice for you, try to identify the ulterior motive in their niceness. If they are mean to you, try to understand the objective behind their meanness. If you see they are trying to bait you into reacting in a specific way, avoid giving them the satisfaction. People who are controlling like to pick soft targets. So if they see that the strategies they are deploying in the early stages of your association with them aren't working the way they are intended to, the manipulators might leave you alone and find someone else to target. If you don't seem to be malleable in any way, they won't want to waste their time on you. You might also want to start keeping a record of all your interactions with manipulative people. This might seem excessive, but psychologists have long understood that writing things down, or keeping a journal, can help us make sense of the way we feel. And it can help put things into the right perspective. Several manipulation tactics work because the victim stops believing in their sense of right and wrong, and they stop trusting their perceptions. When you write things down, preferably in an electronic journal, you can always refer back to it, and this will help ensure that you remain grounded in reality. In cases of gaslighting, manipulators can convince their victims that things didn't happen the way they remember. In instances of brainwashing, they can satisfy their victims that their feelings about certain past events aren't warranted, or that the memories they have are somehow warped. By keeping a journal, you'll have contemporaneous evidence of the things that happened and the way that you felt at the moment. This means that even if your memories fail you later on, you will have a way of knowing the truth, and you'll, therefore, be less likely to let the controlling person convince you that you are wrong. You can use either a physical journal or an electric one, but you have to make sure that the controlling person is unable to get his or her hands on it. Some people even use voice recording devices to keep records of their thoughts and emotions. Whatever method you choose, you should preserve and protect your version of events because controlling people won't hesitate to rewrite your history. You should also try to stay away from manipulative and controlling people. When you meet people for the first time, try to read their body language and their verbal cues, and try to figure out if they have ulterior motives. You can learn to read body language to help you detect when people are cunning or deceptive. But even without any training, you can learn to listen to your instincts about people and to trust those instincts. Psychologists have established that the human mind can be able to accurately perceive potential threats within a few minutes of interacting with someone. Try to differentiate between your instinctual reactions to a person and any prejudicial reactions or cognitive biases that you may have about certain demographics. As we have mentioned several times in this book, manipulative people can come across as charming and charismatic. So, try to look past the superficial charm when you meet a person for the first time. If the controlling person is a member of your family and you can't completely avoid them, try to keep your interactions to a bare minimum. Avoid spending time with them unless you have to, and avoid situations where you may find yourself alone with them. If it's a college at work, you should try to steer away from them too. But make sure that your defensive action doesn't hurt your career. If the person is your boss, you might want to think about the long-term implications of working for a person like that. However, you can try to remain professional and to remind them to do the same whenever they cross the boundary and try to make things personal. You can also deal with controlling people by calling them out and letting them know that you understand what they are doing. If you notice that someone is trying to manipulate you in a specific way, confront him and tell him everything about his plan. After reading this book, you understand the various tricks that manipulative and controlling people tend to use. So you may be able to identify what someone who is targeting you is trying to do. The next time they are up to their shenanigans, call them out on it. They may react in one of several ways. They may deny it and accuse you of being paranoid. They may fake outrage and try to guilt trip you for making such serious accusations. They may react in anger since they know that their plan has been unraveled. Whatever reaction the manipulator throws your way, you have to understand one thing: you are calling them out, not bargaining with them. So, if they try to convince you that you are wrong, just say something like, "If you say so," and get away from them. Some of them will leave you and target someone else because they understand that you are too smart for their machinations. However, others, especially the most malicious of the bunch, may try to retaliate against you with personal attacks. Or they may switch strategies and try a different approach altogether. When they do this, call them out on that as well. Sooner or later, even the more stubborn amongst them will start to realize that they aren't making any headway with you, and they may give up. Few may take each instance of being called out as a challenge to step up their game. Try to sever your connection with such people. Or you can try calling them out in front of witnesses and warning them to stay away from you. Again, as we've said, manipulative and controlling people tend to gravitate towards easy targets. So if you keep proving that you are no easy target, they'll recognize that they are wasting their effort. You should also avoid getting emotionally attached to people who you suspect of being controlling. We acknowledge that this is easier said than done. Meeting new people isn't easy. So when you meet someone you think you might be compatible with, you notice that they have certain traits that could indicate that they are controlling. It's still tempting to give them the benefit of the doubt, because deep within, we want to believe that people are good. You might decide to indulge someone for a while before you fully understand his or her true nature. But as you do that, you become emotionally linked to them. You fall for their charming behavior. And before you gather enough evidence to prove to yourself that they are controlling conclusively, you would already be too emotionally invested in that relationships just to sever ties with them. This can be compounded by the flawed thinking that we might be able to change people, which we discussed earlier. The best approach for you is to set your boundaries from day one before you become emotionally invested. Even if you want to give the person the benefit of the doubt and to get to know them better, you should go into it while understanding your own rules. And don't let emotions cloud that understanding. Stay cordially civil whenever you interact with them, or anyone for that matter. And break with them as soon as you are sure that they are indeed as manipulative as you suspected. So far, we have looked at how you can defend against mind and emotional control when you discover it early enough before you become too invested in a relationship. However, the fact is that even if you are vigilant, some people will fly under your radar. And they'll get close to you before you notice that they are manipulative. In other cases, you may not have a choice on whether or not such people are in your life. You may be able to choose your romantic partner, but you can't choose your family members, colleagues at work, or your casual acquaintances. So, how do you defend against? Well, you may be able to defend yourself by following this simple 3-step process. Know what you want. Manipulative people will seek to control you because they want something from you. They want something very specific from you. And they are manipulating or controlling you to increase their chances of getting that thing out of you. The problem is that if you are the kind of person who spends his or her time giving other people what they want, you will waste your whole life serving other people's interests. And you won't ever get what you want out of life. So, no matter how long you have been under the influence of a manipulative person, this is how you have to start, by figuring out what it is that you want. You have to do this as empirically and as systematically as possible. Take a notepad or some kind of writing material, and start evaluating the things that you consider to be your core values. Write down the things in your life that you believe are the most important to you. Is it your family? Your job? Your faith? Your academic pursuits? Certain hobbies you enjoy? A certain person you love? Be honest with yourself and create a list. First, write down whatever comes to mind. The first list will be in random order. After you have put down all the things that you value, it's time for you to rank them according to how much you prioritize each one of them. List them, from what's most important to what's least important. Don't have any qualm or guilt about the way you rank your values. For example, if you feel your hobby is more important than your career, be honest with yourself in your rankings. Once you have ranked your values, it's time for you to ask yourself why those values are important to you, and why each value is more important or less important relative to the other things in your list. Try to see if there are Any things that you currently value, which may be on your list as a result of the machinations of a controlling person. If there is a value that seems particularly important to you, or it seems to rank higher than it logically should, it could be up there because someone manipulative drilled it into you over a long period of time. If something that is logically important doesn't rank as highly as it should, it could be that a controlling person has been influencing you to think of it as unimportant. You should also repeat the same exercise. And this time, instead of listing and ranking your values, you should list and rank your favorite ways to spend your free time. Start by listing all the activities that you believe you would like to do when you have the time. In this initial list, don't think practically, think imaginatively. If you had the time, and you had no constraints, no one to hold you back, what would you do? You should then create a different list. Not one of the activities you would like to do, but one of all the activities that you remember doing during your personal time lately. All the time you spend outside work is technically person time. Rank those activities based on how much time you have spent on them in the past few months. Now, compare those two lists and spot any differences. What would you like to do that you don't have the time to do? Why don't you have the time to do it? What takes up all your time? Look at the things that you often do, particularly those that take up most of your time. Why do you do those things? Do you truly enjoy doing them? Or do you do them out of a sense of obligation? How much me time do you really get? The reason why it's important to assess both your values and the way you spend your time is that someone may have taken over your life, and he may have installed his or her interests at the helm of all your lists. A controlling person may have destroyed your real values, and he may have forced his values on you. A controlling person may be taking up all your time so that instead of doing what makes you happy, you are spending every free moment you have doing what makes him happy. If you find yourself spending every evening in a sports bar with your boyfriend when you would rather be taking a dancing class, it means that he has taken control over your evenings and that his leisure activities are a bigger priority for you than your preferred leisure activities. If you find that most of your values are external rather than internal, it means that you care more about someone else's happiness than your own. Compare how things should be and how they are. If you find that your priorities are not your own, it's time to make a change. Stand your ground. Relationships, whether they are partnerships, marriages, friendships, or workplace relationships, are all about give and take. Controlling people and manipulators want to take more than they give or even more than you are willing to give. There is only one way to truly regain control if you are under the influence of a manipulative person, and that is to stand up to them. Now that you know what you want, and you are able to identify areas in your life where you have compromised too much and given control over to someone else, you'll have to confront the manipulative people in your life. There are no two ways about it. It's either you regain control, or you let them control you. To stand up for yourself, you have to reinstate your real value and get rid of the values that have been imposed on you by manipulative people. If, when assessing your values, you realize that you don't have your priorities straight, it's time to let the people who take up your time know that from this point moving on, you will prioritize your interests and their interests will take the back seat. You have to make it clear to yourself and the people in your life that you have the same rights as they do, and you will no longer let them trample on those rights. Controlling people like to think that they are superior to the people they seek to control. So if you have one in your life right now, he or she is overdue for a reality check. That's not to say that you should unload on such people and release all your pent-up anger onto them. You want to make it clear, and in the most logical of terms, that you will no longer be their doormat, that you won't be subservient to them, and that you do have the moral high ground in that situation. Here are crucial tips that will help you stand up for yourself. Realize that no one else can invalidate you. The reason we are so afraid to stand up to controlling people is that we seek external validation. However, the whole concept of external validation is a fallacy. Sure, People can validate us. A boss can praise you in public. A spouse can tell others what a nice person you are, etc. When these people validate us, it only works if we choose to internalize that validation. The same goes for invalidation. The only reason people have the power to invalidate us is we give them that power, we choose to internalize the invalidation. So, if you are afraid to stand up to someone because you think they'll invalidate you, that's self-sabotage. No matter what others say, the decision to perceive your thoughts, feelings, and actions as invalid only lies within you. This knowledge should empower you to stand up to anyone, even if you know there's going to be some backlash. Make people respect and value your time. Your time on this planet is very short, and it's extremely valuable. As part of standing up for yourself, you have to make sure that the people in your life realize that. If someone shows no respect for your time, then you have to cut the amount of time you give to them. Ensure that you always stay calm when you confront manipulators. You'll come up with a strategy to assert for yourself. But no matter how well thought out your plan is, it could fail if you let emotions get in the way. The only way to win is by staying calm. When you confront a controlling person, make sure that you process the entire interaction through the logical part of your brain, not the emotional part. This is going to be difficult, as we have already mentioned in the book. Emotions are more primal than logic, so it's very easy for them to take over. You have to make a concerted effort to stay calm and logical. When you stand up to someone, emotion is your enemy. It doesn't matter if it's a positive emotion or a negative one, it's going to work against you. When controlling people see that you are finally standing up to them, they'll react in an emotional way. Emotions can be infectious. For example, when someone raises their voice in a conversation, you will instinctively do the same. Still, you have to make a mental effort not to mirror the manipulator's emotions. Make your point in a calm voice. And if they react with anger, let them vent. Then reiterate your point calmly as you address any points they may have raised in their angry tirade. You may feel strong emotions in the process, and you'll be tempted to act on those emotions. But at that moment, you should realize that the stakes are much higher than that. You are trying to regain control over your life, and emotions are of no use for you at that moment. Unless you control your emotions, you won't be able to regain control over your life.